Snarv and Dracovin, Lord and Emperor of the Dracovin Empire, and welcome! It is time to continue my discussion on the Pathfinder role-playing game system. When we left off, we've been talking about the races of Pathfinder. And I'm not talking about your standard races, your elves, humans, dwarfs, etc. I'm talking about the more unusual races you can play in your Pathfinder games. Teaching you a little bit more about them, why you might want to play them, what kind of things you'd have as options. So today for you, I have the Ratfolk. So the Ratfolk are humanoid rodents. Kind of small, like, traditionally they are desert dwellers or subterranean dwellers. That seems to be their natural habitat where they originally came from. Now, oftentimes now they're actually found in kind of nomadic trading caravans as they move around. Kind of like the pack rats, which they kind of have a similar appearance to. They love to kind of hoard and collect things, to gather up these massive collections of items which pique their interest. Oftentimes, the kind of items that pique their interest are mechanical or magical in nature, which they love to gather together to put into their collection, and oftentimes to tinker and fix up with, to make sure everything's repaired and working properly. So, of course, that blood of tinkering is just as much as the blood of hoarding when it comes in there. So, the other thing about them that's important to note is they are shrewd merchants. They know how to make the best deals, and how to keep the proper alliances, and to shift them around when necessary between things like merchant guilds, black markets, or bazaars. They are shrewd master merchants that know what they want. It is important to note, though, that because of their nature of wishing to hoard things which pique their interest, a lot of times, though they're excellent merchants, the goods that they end up taking away from their transactions are not gold. Gold's important, but it's maybe not what they want. So you will oftentimes find rat folk who will go into a trading situation, be very successful in their trade, get a great deal, but when they're leaving their location, whatever kind of cart they're bringing back is now stacked higher with materials than they left with things that pique their interest. Things that they said, we need that instead. The gold was good, but this is better. Of course, they have their own giant rats to take it out of town. So they oftentimes will have hordes of goods that they have accumulated, hoarded together. Not always it's gold. Now, your typical rat folk is around 4 foot tall. They weigh about 80 pounds, and the thing is they wear these kind of heavy robes covering them. This has twofold effects. Because they naturally are more of a desert dweller, this means that, hey, this is something that would help protect us from the desert. The other side of this is that rat folk do know that their rodent-like appearance is disturbing to many other humanoids. Rats are vermin. People don't tend to like them, so rat folk realize this. So they oftentimes cover themselves, kind of hiding the fact that they're little giant anthropomorphic rodents. Now, they love jewelry as much as they like just hoarding various things, so they oftentimes will grab their bonds, copper, or gold bits of jewelry and adorn their ears and tails with them, especially things like earrings or even tail rings. And as I said, they are known to train giant rats, which, if we're going mechanically in Pathfinder, it's technically a dire rat with the giant template. The giant simple template. But effectively, it's a huge medium-sized rat that they're using as a pack animal. Now, to say rat folk are communal is an understatement. They truly are. They live in these massive underground warrens, or the traditional area that they would live in. Kind of cave areas that have plenty of room for each individual rat folk to have their own little stash. But also places that if they need to escape from danger, they can sneak their way out. So subterranean tunnels, though they are the traditional, they will also be found in city slums. They sometimes can function just the same way as the subterranean tunnels of their ancestors past. Now, they have an intense familiar bond with each other. The group of rat folk consider each other a family, and in fact, they have this kind of bond that extends out to rodents in general. They respect things like rats, so that there might be kind of fighting and kind of influx in between them. When something happens that threatens more of the community to hold, they will rise up to defend each other. So it's though, they might quarrel, bicker, battle with each other to a degree. They are ready to turn that around and defend each other if something threatens it. They're still family. They are incredibly quick to go back to their stockpile, Remember, it's got mechanical and magical items. Grab what they can, gear themselves up, and ready into battle. Though rat folks, as a whole, prefer to look to talk things out when it comes to disagreements or problems. They prefer to make some kind of trade or some kind of agreement that way, something that they don't have to worry so much about getting into the fight. Now, the fact is, a warren could become overcrowded. Too many could be born there, the area could no longer support the life as it would be with the amount of them. And there seems to be this natural instinct in younger rat folk that they can sense when they just won't fit in the society anymore, when things won't work out for them to stay there. So they go out and wander. Now, if a group of them wander out at the same time, they might find a new fertile area to settle down in and call their own and form a new warren. The important part of this new warren is it will be intrinsically connected to the home warren, where the ancestors of these people came from. They are connected together. They are still family, kind of creating a network as this original group grows bigger, and it keeps all the warrens kind of interconnected of the rat folk. Granted, you might just have an individual young rat folk wandering out on their own. At that point in time, they're just going to keep wandering until they find some kind of fortune on their own. They might find a new place to live along their journeys that they'll go off and live there on their own. Or eventually, after about a year, perhaps traveling with caravans, they'll come back. And that's a year less of supplies that the warren itself had to deal with them. And maybe now, some of the older folks passed away and, hey, it's able to support them now. You never know. But that's an opportunity for them to get away for a while, help things out at the warrens if they can't quite support all these people, and come back and see later. Now, your individual rat folk is, of course, as I said, driven with that need to hoard and gather. But the close familial ties give them a kind of respect to most societies. Though again, when it comes to individual rat folks, if they have that kind of goal in mind, especially when it comes to things that are devolving around tinkering, messing around with complex objects, they might bend some rules here and there as necessary. So you'll find that the general alignment of the rat folk tends to actually be neutral. They tend to be a neutral species. And if you do find one that goes into the religious doctrines, because some of them do, they oftentimes look to deities of commerce, kind of obvious with their merchant background, but also family. Because they have such strong familial ties, a deity of family fits right in with them. Now, younger rat folk might be driven by the need to go out into the world and seek opportunities not only for themselves, but for their warrens, and therefore become an adventurer. They might be seeking out new products for the market that they are connected to, maybe safer places that they can have their caravans going to, or even think that adventuring itself is a safer, easier way to get money than maybe their warren has been doing with their merchant ties. Warren might be dealing with a lot of black market individuals, seems very dangerous. So this young ratfolk going out there and battling some creatures for a little while, grabbing a bunch of gold, might be a better idea. Now, ratfolk, when it comes to battling against them, they use more sneaky tactics, things like sabotaging enemy positions, using things like traps, and of course ambushes to get the upper hand against their opponents. Because of these natural tendencies, younger ratfolk, when they do take on a class, oftentimes find themselves as alchemists, rogues, or even gunslingers. Now let's talk about the racial traits you get as a ratfolk. You're going to get better dexterity, intelligence, but are going to lose out some strength. It's kind of that size things that most of the time small creatures lose a bit of dex. Small creatures gain a bit of dex, lose a bit of strength. Of course, as I said, they're small, and they have the standard speed for most small creatures, 20 feet. Now they're master tinkerers, granting themselves bonuses to craft alchemy, perception, and use magic device just naturally. They also have a natural kind of empathy for other rodents and can kind of work with them a little better, have bonuses to handle animal when it comes to working with rodents. And one of their natural abilities is if you get rat folk together and they fight together, they can swarm together. They can occupy the same space as if they were basically then in two different spaces. And if these two rat folk working together in the same space go against the same opponent, they're considered flanking. They kind of can take advantage of the fact that they're in this space and confuse their opponent to getting some open opportunities, which really helps for, of course, a ratfolk rogue. Of course, they also have dark vision. Now, for their alternate racial traits, many of them find them switching up their skill modifiers, granting them different bonuses to things such as bluff, sense motive, or sometimes even stealth when they're very stealthy. They can also take scent, be able to smell a little better. They can get some bonuses when they're pushed into a corner, and some of them have a kind of unnatural, unnerving kind of aura to them that kind of reverses their empathy towards animals. It makes them able to kind of fight them better. Now, as for favored class bonuses, most of them are alright. They're interesting ones, help you out depending on the character you're going. The best one I really have to say is if you are doing a Ratfolk Alchemist, they can get 1/6 of an extra discovery. That's actually a pretty big thing, so that means they can get 3 extra discoveries if they keep taking that. Pretty good. Now, some racial archetypes for specific classes that you can take as a Ratfolk. First off, there's Plaguebringer. This is for your alchemist rat folks. This actually specializes as using disease as a weapon. They, for one thing, get special plague vials that can help spread some plague. They also get disease resistances in themselves. The plague vial being a replacement for their mutagen node. So they still have their bombs, but now instead of a mutagen, they have a special plague vial they can use on their opponents. Now the other racial archetype is for Gunslinger, the Gulch Gunner, which are particularly types of Ratfolk gunslingers that are trained to fight in tight quarters. Because Ratfolk tend to live underground in tunnels and such, they don't have that same kind of long line of sight that most gunslingers want. So they've developed abilities to battle at close quarters and get in right in talk to you. Basically fight side by side with someone, except with a pistol. They kind of switch around some of their bonuses to make it that it's really great for them to get in close and be right up next to you, shooting you in the gut. Now, there are a number of Ratfolk racial feats you might want to look at. The first one gives you a burrow speed, half of your normal speed. So that's actually pretty useful for digging out some tunnels on your own if you want to. The next one gives them some sharp talons, so they get some claw attacks on their hands. And the final one I want to talk about gives them an ability to squeeze in a little bit more. They're actually considered one size category smaller when it comes to their squeezing rules. They can squeeze in a much smaller place than most creatures can. But that's it for today. I talked about the Ratfolk, an interesting race of hoarders, merchants, and desert wanderers who have found their place in the world by being, of course, expert merchants. Granted, their want for being business is oftentimes to increase their own hoards rather than their own gold stashes. An interesting juxtaposition that they're not really the rich merchants, but great ones. And of course, Ratfolk adventurers are oftentimes perhaps working towards that merchant goal, or just working towards putting themselves in a better position than having to go into the dangerous merchant life of their own family. And family is everything for them. So it's an interesting character that you would look to. Maybe your fellow party is your family. And you're always looking on that money gain a little bit, but always willing to trade it for something really interesting that might help out the team, might not. And of course, if it doesn't, you always work on it, tinker a little bit. Interesting basis is for some characters. But anyway, hope you're having a great day. If you've played a Ratfolk character in the past, let me know in the comments below. I love to hear about your characters and the various Pathfinder games you've done. And until the next time, I bid you farewell.